Welcome, Earth and Space Science students, to the characteristics of our planet, building a map of latitude and longitude for review with EdPuzzle. Please open up Map 1 PDF with the Cami app and the EdPuzzle video in a separate tab. Directions. Please watch the EdPuzzle video and build a map review of the most important lines of latitude and longitude. The EdPuzzle will stop each time you are asked to add a feature on your map. You may rewatch any or all parts of the EdPuzzle again if you need assistance. Let's take a look at a finished product before we move on. This is an example of what your map will look like when you have completed all the personalized information to our map. You will have broken down the basic blank map and added lines of latitude, parallels, added lines of longitude, meridians. You have labeled the equator. You have labeled the prime meridian. You will have broken down the lines of latitude's most important lines: Tropic of Cancer, 23.5 degrees north; Tropic of Capricorn, 23.5 degrees south. You have also labeled the Arctic Circle, 66.5 degrees north, and the Antarctic Circle, 66.5 degrees south. You have shaded the polar regions in a light blue, both north and south, and you will have shaded the tropics in a light red. You will have labeled the western and eastern hemisphere as well, and labeled the prime meridian and the international date line. Let's go back to our assignment. So please open up Map 1 and follow along in this EdPuzzle to complete the personalized information of your map. Let's get started. Just a reminder, before we start actual labeling on the map, at any time you need a degree symbol, we have our quick and handy Chromebook tools, which you can go to anytime under hashtag Chromebook Intelligence in your Google Classroom. To make a degree symbol on a Chromebook, Control plus Shift plus U all at the same time. That will give you a U with an underline underneath of it. Then you type 00B0, then use a space bar, and that will give you a degree symbol. Once again, more detailed videos are posted for you under hashtag Chromebook Intelligence in your Google Classroom under your classwork page. Under topics will be hashtag Chromebook Intelligence. Let's get started into this activity. The first thing we want to do is we're going to be using the Shapes tool and the Text Box tools to complete this. In our Shapes tool, let's first start with the origin or the main important lines for each map. And we'll start off with the lines of latitude first. And our first line of latitude, I'm going to grab my shapes. I'm going to grab a color, and let's use purple here for our equator. And we're going to draw a line going across, and this is at 4 font if you need it. 4 font, trace over the line by drawing a line, and we're going to draw that. And this will be we'll label this equator in just a moment. Our next will be the most important line of longitude, which is the prime meridian. We're going to keep our line tool. We're going to change up colors. We'll do yellow for this one. And this is found at 0 degrees longitude. We'll come back and label these again. But essentially, every time that you open up a map, you want to highlight over these 2 lines. Our most important line of latitude is always going to be the equator. And our most important line of longitude is always going to be the prime meridian. Let's get started by labeling our latitude lines and labeling our hemispheres. The next thing we need to do is grab a text box. We want to go to 48 font, and we're going to add some color to the map. So we're going to grab and we're going to write right in the middle of the map for right now, and we're going to have red as our color, and I'm going to fill in with behind that with yellow. And I'm going to type the words lines of latitude. They are also known as parallels. Parallels. And at this point, I would like you to make sure you have typed that. And then I'm going to show you a trick. We're going to label it along the side. So we need to rotate this. So we'll go at the very end of our text box tools, and you'll see a rotate button. I'm going to rotate it, and we're going to drag the entire thing. When you hover over top and you get the 4 directional arrows, drag it to put it in the margin over here on the left. Just a reminder, this is 48 font. Add some color to your map, lines of latitude parallels, and at this point, I'd like you to label lines of latitude parallels on your map. Please do that now. Okay, thank you for adding the lines of latitude. Let's move on to our most important line of latitude, and that is the equator. So we're going to change our font size this time to 24. We're going to place our line on the equator itself. We're going to type the word equator, E-Q-U-A-T-O-R, and we're going to add the degree symbol. Zero. Zero. And our degree symbol, equator. And you click off from that and come back and click on it with our select tool. We're going to type it again on this side over here. I'm going to have it on both sides. You can type it anywhere and then move it. So we're going to put it right on top of the equator. So we have equator and equator. Please stop your map now and add equator on both sides of your map to personalize it. Please take the time and add equator now. Okay, the equator now has been added. The equator splits the Earth into two equal hemispheres, and it is the most important line of latitude. So we're going to write down the hemispheres it splits it into. And the first one we have, and we're going to use 24 font, and we're going to type Northern Hemisphere. We're going to rotate that, and we're going to move it over to the edge. We have Northern Hemisphere. And if we have the Northern Hemisphere, and you see each of our degrees, 15 degrees north, 30 degrees north, 45 degrees north. These are all Northern Hemisphere up to the North Pole, which is 90 degrees north. And then we're going to type Southern Hemisphere. And we're going to rotate that. I'm going to rotate it 3 times. We'll keep it going the same way here. So now we know that going below this equator on a map, which is south on a map typically, 15 degrees south, 30 degrees south, 45 degrees south, 60 degrees south, 75 degrees south. So we've now broken down the northern and southern hemisphere. Please add that to your map now. Thank you for completing that. Up next, we're going to add 2 more important lines of latitude, and they are the Tropic of Capricorn and the Tropic of Cancer. We'll start off with the Tropic of Cancer. Grab our text box. We're going to create it anywhere I'm moving around on the map. So this is called the Tropic of Cancer, and is 23.5 degrees north. And the Tropic of Cancer is named after the constellation that is visible in the sky when it reaches to this point. And we'll be talking about this more in depth as the year progresses. We also need to add the Tropic of Capricorn. So I need another text box. Tropic of Capricorn. And that's 23.5 degrees south. Now, we already have denoted on our map the dotted lines. These are the 23.5 degrees south and 23.5 degrees north. Now, I also like you to add one more feature to this, and I would like you to shade what we call the tropical region. The tropical region, so I want you to grab a markup tool box highlighter, and I'd like you to choose a light red or red, and I want you to highlight the tropical region, which is 23.5 degrees north to 23.5 degrees south. Please complete this highlighting now and add the Tropic of Cancer at 23.5 degrees north and the Tropic of Capricorn at 23.5 degrees south. Please do this now. As I previously mentioned, we'll be back to talk about this region later, but just a quick note, this region here is what we call the tropics, and these are the lines where we call the solstice or sun stop. Our sun stops moving farther north in the northern hemisphere in June 21st, 22nd, and the sun stops moving farther south in December 21st, 22nd, and these are called solstice. Now, this is where the sun's most active heating and the highest angle of the sun, which heats the earth, but we'll be back to revisit that when we talk about this in meteorology. But we do need to know that the measurements between the Tropic of Cancer, 23.5 degrees north, and the Tropic of Capricorn, 23.5 degrees south. This entire shaded region in red is called the tropics. We're going to add now the polar regions, and we're going to grab our line tool again, go to shapes, our line tool, and we're going to grab some blue. Actually, let's grab a little different color. Let's grab some green, and we're going to trace over this next dotted line in the northern hemisphere here. And don't forget our font for our lines are 4. Since we already have our line tool, we're going to grab it for our southern. We're going to trace over that line as well. Trace right over top of the dotted line. And we're going to label these lines. We're going to label them the Arctic Circle. So we'll go up towards the top here and label this the Arctic Circle. ARCTIC circle, and that is found at 66.5 degrees north. And we're going to move that up right onto the Arctic Circle, right on top of our line. And we have down below, go somewhere close so I can redraw it and remove it. And this would be the Antarctic Circle. That's 66.5 degrees south. We're going to put that over top of our line. And we're going to go back and we're going to grab our markup tool, our box highlighter. And this time, because it's a colder region, we're going to grab the blue and we want to highlight everything from the North Pole all the way across this region. That's the Antarctic Circle, the Arctic Circle at 66.5 degrees north to 90 degrees north. And the Arctic Circle is 66.5 degrees south to 90 degrees south. And we've completed our lines of latitude. So at this point, I'd like you to stop and I'd like you to make sure you add the title for Arctic Circle, 66.5 degrees north, your line, your highlighting, come down, create your line, your highlighting, in your Antarctic Circle at 66.5 degrees south. Please do that now. Thank you for completing the Arctic Circle and Antarctic Circle labeling. We're now moving into our second most important line, and that is our line of longitude. And we've already drawn our line, our most important line of longitude, and that's the prime meridian. So let's label that now. So I'm grabbing my text tool. I'm changing my color. The color is now going to be orange, and I'm going to add a back color, and that's going to be black. And we're going to write our word prime meridian. We're going to do this 2 times. Prime meridian. We're going to capitalize that M there. 0 degrees. Okay, and we're going to rotate that, rotate, and we're going to move it right into place here. Now we're going to put it vertical because our lines of longitude are going to go across the bottom here. So we're going to type that again. And it's prime meridian, 0 degrees. Go up to the top of your text tools. At the very end, you have the rotate button. We're going to rotate it, and this time we're going to add it at the top because it's pretty far away from each other. And this is our prime meridian. So let's please take a moment and label our vertical line at 0 degrees is prime meridian and line of longitude. Please do that now. Thank you for labeling the prime meridian 2 times. Now we're going to label the lines going across the bottom, and those are our lines of longitude. So we're going to change the font size again. We're going to go back to 48 this time, and we're going to type lines of longitude, also known as meridians. We're going to move that down to the bottom here so we can see our lines. So you should be able to see that. And we're going to ask you to stop at this point to label lines of longitude at the bottom. These are all of our measurements of lines of longitude, also known as meridians, at the bottom, separating the western hemisphere and the eastern, which we'll do in a moment. So please add lines of longitude now. Thank you for adding lines of longitude. We're now going to add the hemispheres for our longitude. So I'm going to go back to my text box. We're going to go back to 24 font. I'm going to click to open it up on the bottom. We can type this anywhere. I'm going to move it down a little bit here. And we're going to add a different background color for this. And we'll use blue. And we'll have Western Hemisphere. And we're going to add on this side. Move it down. Eastern Hemisphere. So please take a moment right now and label Western Hemisphere and Eastern Hemisphere of our lines of longitude. Please do that now, adding Western Hemisphere and Eastern Hemisphere. Okay, thank you for adding the Western and Eastern Hemisphere. We're now going to add our last line. It is not directly related to our section right now, but we'll be talking about very soon in part 2 of chapter 6, section 2. So we're going to grab our text box, move it down here so we can type a little easier. We're going to go to 48 font. We're going to write in white, and we're going to use a white background, and we're going to type white on white is not working, is it? White with a red background. The international date line, which is 180 degrees. This is very important for us when we talk about calendar dates soon, but we're going to add it to our map now. And that will go over here on this line. So I'm going to go back to my text, go to the rotation tool, and we're going to drag this one over to the edge. We have the international date line, and that is now there for our reference later on. We're also going to be adding a line to it as well. Actually, we'll make this a little bit smaller. It's a little too big. 48 font. How about we make it 36. Drag it across. And we're going to grab our line tool. We want a shape, we want a line, and we'll make this yellow because it is also a line of longitude, which is a meridian. Trace over that line all the way up. Now we'll be back to talk about that international date line in the second part. At this point, we've completed all of the main features of your preliminary map. This is a great reference map you'll be using. So before we go any farther, I'd like you to stop and I'd like you to add the international date line, add it at 36 font, draw our line at 180th meridian, and we'll be back to talk briefly about this map before we conclude this activity. So please add the international date line at this time. Thank you for adding the international date line to your map. At this time, we've completed all of the features that I would like you to complete onto this basic map for reference for primarily lines of latitude and lines of longitude. Once again, just a reminder that the equator is the most important line of latitude, which will always start, and the prime meridian is the most important line of longitude. Lines of latitude are also known as parallels. Lines of longitude are also known as meridians. Lines of latitude separate the Earth into the northern hemisphere, which go from 0 degrees to 90 degrees north, and from 0 degrees to 90 degrees south. Lines of longitude break the Earth into the western hemisphere and to the eastern hemisphere. From 0 degrees to 180 degrees west, and from 0 degrees to 180 degrees east. Notice that 180 degrees does not have an east or west symbol. Same as the equator does not have a direction east or west, and the prime or north or south, sorry, with the equator, and the prime meridian does not have a degrees east or west. At this time, we'll conclude this activity, but please come back and reference this map at any time. One last thing to reminder is when we talk about hemispheres, hemi equals half, and sphere equals a 3D circle. With that information, this basic skills, you will be successful in our mapping of the Earth's surface in our imaginary grid system that we call latitude and longitude. Thank you for your hard work. Please make sure you turn in this assignment and have a great day.